Make 2020 fantastic. Come to Airecon, 13th to the 15th of March, and you can meet some fantastic people, play some fantastic games. Just everything is going to be fantastic. You can get your tickets now by going to airecon.co.uk/tickets or by following the links in the show notes. And now, on with the show. Hello and welcome to another episode of We're Not Wizards. My name's Richard. I'll be your host for 2020. 2020. It's like 2020 vision. It's like looking at things in a new way, or maybe not only just looking at things in a new way, but maybe expanding your horizons, expanding where you're looking. So maybe we're not just looking at kind of tabletop on the table, but maybe we're also looking at digital tabletop as well. Maybe we're considering and maybe traveling to far off exciting lands and places. And you've got to begin your year with something fun, something exciting, something different, and something which, you know, maybe even their name itself kind of gives a little bit of a background about where they are. So joining me, they need no introduction, even though that has been an introduction. I've got Suzanne Sheldon, who's known for the Dice Tower. She's known for many things. She's known for apps and stuff, but she has now been known for saying yes and guesting on this show. So hello, Suzanne.
Hello, Richard. I believe I said yes quite a while ago, and have been looking forward to this opportunity for a very long time.
I think, I have no excuse. I generally have a list, and I keep kind of having to organise and reorganising my time. And then I thought, and then I realised your name was on the list, and I went, I really need to kind of make that effort and just jump on and just jump in there and just say, come on, let's get this organised. And thankfully you didn't spurn me and send me away with a tail between my legs like a spurned dog. But you said yes to come on, so thank you very much. First of all, are you well? I guess is the first question.
Oh, Richard, is anybody ever truly well in today's world? Yes, I'm quite well. Yes. I'm quite busy, to be honest with you. I can barely look ahead more than a week in my life right now, but I always say better busy than bored, and I'm quite busy, so there you have it.
What's kind of taking up your time? I mean, are you at the point where you're having to are you using things like Google Keep to keep a track of all your tasks and stuff like that? Are you using spreadsheets? I mean, are you constantly having to go, oh, I need to do this, and this?
Oh, I have spreadsheets. I have multiple project management and task list tools. I've got Google Docs. I've got Asana. I've got Trello. I've got lists to keep track of my lists, and I'm still barely keeping up. So I don't know sometimes if technology helps or hurts me in my personal life management, but I keep on trying, and sometimes that's the best we can do.
It's a new year, so one of the things that everybody will be looking forward to is kind of conventions and plans. We want to talk about Airecon because we're going to jump back and forward anyway. But I've got a list in my head, and if I don't say something, I'll forget, and it'll just drift off, and then we'll get to the end of the show, and you'll be like, you didn't ask us about Airecon. You are venturing over to what the Americans would call England and what us up in Scotland would call the UK, because England's a different country. But you're still venturing over to see us in March, to coming to Harrogate and spending some time at Airecon.
I am indeed, and I am so excited. I am not excited for the flight, but I am excited for actually being at the convention.
Because how long is the flight going to be? Is like is it an 8-hour flight, or is it got like a
no,
stopover?
it's like 12 hours.
Wow.
And actually, because of the airport situation, I have to take 3 flights, and it stretches out to like 16 hours or 18 hours, something like that.
That's dedication.
I'm very, very excited for Airecon. What can I say?
Have you been to? Because I know you went to Essen, and I know you're kind of like a regular, and I'm guessing you're a regular at like kind of like the bigger conventions in the US. So have you been to kind of like UK Games Expo before yourself?
No, I haven't.
Right.
I haven't been to any gaming event in the UK at all, or in that general vicinity. I've been only to Essen.
Yeah.
I am truly thrilled to go to Airecon, and I have you been to Airecon?
Yeah, I went last year for the first time.
So good. You can tell me a little bit about what to expect, because I don't know.
I can answer any questions that you have. In fact, I was speaking to Mark Cook today, and I said, Suzanne's coming on the show to have a chat, and he said to me, you make sure you answer any questions that Suzanne has, and don't make a whole load of fibs and lies up so that so that you worry her. And I was like, I'll see what I can do. So I am here. I have no kind of bias on this at all, in any way, shape or form whatsoever. Maybe not. But what are your questions as somebody who's going to be landing in Airecon for the first time? What kind of questions do you have that I can maybe answer for you?
So I don't typically eat meat.
Okay.
What are my food options looking like?
There is in terms of food options, there are food vans within the vicinity. In fact, one of the things that I loved, I have celiacs, so I have a wheat intolerance. So me being able to get food myself was a very, very very sensitive issue, because if I'm not able to get something to eat, then it's just, I get hungry and then I get grumpy. But they do have vans there. They were having kind of like pizza. So you could have different pizza. There were people doing pancakes there. There were people that'll be doing, salads and stuff like that. So you'll be easy. And then Harrogate itself, the convention centre is within pretty much the town centre, so it's very, very easy for you to get out and about to kind of local restaurants. You can walk pretty much not too far within Harrogate, and you'll find yourself, there's a lot of pubs around the area, there's a lot of restaurants around the area, so you shouldn't find it too difficult to be catered for. And even a lot of the big chains, there's a big push for, there's even a big push for like veganism and vegetarianism and everything like that. So you'll be catered for quite well, I would have thought. And okay. I can bring you some lettuce.
Okay.
If you want.
That sounds delightful. I like how the first food places that you mentioned were all things that you couldn't eat at, like pizza and pancakes.
Yes. Well, the pizza van and the pancake van both offered a gluten-free version. So I was spoiled, because that was one of my main concerns, is when I'm here, am I going to be able to get something to eat? And then I went outside and I asked, and they says, yeah, we can do you a gluten-free pizza. And there was a pancake van. They says, yeah, we can do you a gluten-free pancake. So I was happy, content, stuffed, you could even say.
That sounds delightful, and better stuffed than hungry and angry. So that's delightful.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Have you got? I take it you've organised kind of like places to stay as well. Then
I believe I have a hotel room, and I'm staying with Mandy, who is my podcasting partner on the Dice Tower, and my partner on some new YouTube videos shows as well.
Okay.
I have no idea where that is. I'm just going to show up, and hopefully Mark will recognize us and then say, here's where you are sleeping.
I think Mark had Rodney over a couple of times, and I know that he made sure that he'll look after you. You'll go out, he'll take you out. He says that he will he's promised that he will personally make sure he cooks for you a couple of times. so he's not just living up to his name. So there's that. I can't remember what else he's promised, but I'm sure we could add a couple of things to the list. You are aware that Airecon is, in terms of the convention, it's not huge, and it's very, very kind of focused on the kind of the game side of things. There's quite a few there are going to be quite a few kind of exhibitors attending, kind of this, showing off and demoing their games. Is there anything that are you looking forward to? What are you looking forward to kind of the most, kind of when you're there? Is it playing games, or is it meeting kind of certain people, other kind of media people? What are you looking for?
I'll tell you, it's a position of privilege, and I'm very aware of it, that I get to go to a fair number of conventions, and I've been to dozens of conventions over the last decade. But I have found, sure, I love going to Essen because there are literally hundreds of games there that I want to purchase and play. And I find that thrilling, and I love doing that. But if I had my druthers, if magically all the hot new games that interest me would just show up on my doorstep, I would be perfectly happy not attending large conventions. I love conventions most that let me sit down and play games and make new friends, or play with old friends that we only get to see each other at conventions. So what I'm really hoping at Airecon is that people will say hi and will want to play games with me. I almost never ask to join a game. I love being asked to join games, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Do you feel, because you're well-known kind of name and face within the kind of the media space, do you find that people don't approach you as regularly? I mean, normally when I meet people, I have to walk up to them and say, see the t-shirt? I do a podcast. And it's like, don't worry, everybody does a podcast. But would you kind of wish sometimes for a little bit of the anonymous days where you could pretty much wander around a convention and you wouldn't have people kind of sidling up kind of awkwardly to you just to say hello, where you could just sit down with people and say, oh, can I join in and have a game, kind of thing?
I think it's interesting that you ask the question in that way, because I'm not that well known in at least when I go to conventions. I certainly have some people who come up to me and introduce themselves and are familiar with something that I've done in video or via the podcast, and that's absolutely delightful and thrilling, quite frankly. But it doesn't happen that often. I think there are far more game players, game buyers, gamers out there that have no clue and give no cares about who I am or what I do in the industry than gamers out there who know who I am and who do care about what I'm doing. And so going to conventions, I don't necessarily have a wish for anonymity, because I don't think that it doesn't impact me when people do recognize me, because it's a pleasant moment and we move on. So from that perspective, I guess I don't wish for more anonymity, because I have plenty already. And I think for you, it's totally true. One of the advantages I have is I do video, and so your face is out there. It's one of the weirdest things about the board gaming industry is the facelessness of so many people involved. So for people who do podcasts, everybody knows your voice. If they hear you speak, they might go, oh, yeah, I know you. Do you do that podcast with that Scottish dude? Yeah. But they might not know you across the room if they saw you across the room. And what's funny is it's the same for game designers. I have been at many large conventions, and I happen to know a fair number of game designers now. So if I'm standing next to a game designer and talking to them, just at PAX Unplugged, a lovely person came up and asked to take a photo with me because they were a fan of the podcast. And that's, delightful. But the person I was with, is Isaac Vega, from Plaid Hat Games who designed Ashes, you know?
Yeah.
And so he looks at Isaac Vega and hands him his phone and says, will you take a photo of us? And Isaac just smiles and says, of course. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, this is so weird. It's an odd thing, I think, in our industry or in our hobby overall that people like you can flit around fairly unknown in public spaces, even in public spaces surrounded by people who know who you are, technically.
Yeah, I did kind of, when I was at Airecon last year, when I was in the elevator and I just asked somebody if they were having a good time, they were like, yeah, it's brilliant. And then they went, I know your voice. And I was like, okay. And that was the one time, the only time in the entire of Airecon, and I kind of walked out and I went, yes. And then obviously, it was like you said, I was able to kind of go around and I kind of was able to meet people that I wanted to meet, a lot of the exhibitor guys, and you know, it was strange being able to say hello to people that I had been speaking to an awful lot online. And it was also that kind of awkwardness, unawkwardness of meeting with people that I'd had guesting on the show for the first time, because there wasn't that kind of, when you meet somebody for the first time, there's the kind of like, oh, yeah, hi, how are you? Kind of thing. It was straight into kind of like, you know, maybe having conversations with this person for an hour on and off, and then through Twitter DMs for ages. So it was almost like a case of, you know, how are you doing? You know, you muppet kind of thing. And it was straight into kind of like chat and kind of conversation and stuff like that, which kind of happened to me. It happened to me recently when I met Mike Delisio. Quite recently for the first time, kind of the tail end of last year. So there wasn't that kind of, it was just straight into, let's get a game then, because we don't have to have this kind of awkward thing. So that was kind of cool. Are you going to be sitting down then and trying to get a few games in? I mean, normally at the conventions, do you get a chance to play a kind of a lot of games, or are you kind of doing kind of some media stuff that you've got to cover as well?
I hope, quite frankly, that almost all my time at Airecon is spent either eating food or playing games. I have a couple of minor obligations, and I think that Mark has been, Mandy and I are talking about some kind of group event that we could do, whether it's a collective roll and write game session or something like that.
Yeah.
But really, I'm going to Airecon to hopefully meet people and hopefully get to play games. And honestly, I would say of all the conventions I go to in a given year, I only get to play games at maybe 50% of them. And that's what I love playing games. That's why I do what I do. That's why I've been a board gamer for 25 plus years, is I love games. So that's the vibe. Mark Cook, the organizer, such a wonderful, friendly, affable person. I think that he's trying to arrange it so that we get that time and that we add whatever value we can to the convention as people who make content, but also just get to enjoy it as gamers, getting to play games with cool people in the UK.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I did last year. As I say, I met Ross, More Games Please, Ross, who is the loveliest person
and
in the entire hobby.
Some of the loveliest hair.
I didn't want to say that, but I have tried as he's walked past me to smell it to see if it smells as good as the way it looks. But and so I know that's a taboo thing, and there's a lot of consent issues but it wasn't like close enough to look like I was doing it. But I just kind of sidled up, kind of very slightly, and and I didn't manage. So that's potentially what's happening. He's going to be coming back on the show, so I should maybe just bite the bullet and ask him if I can maybe, tweak his shell-like nose and ruffle that lovely curly mop of hair that he does have. But that's so good. Yeah. So no, it'll be good to see kind of people like that. Are you gonna kind of be shipping in then shipping out then? Are you gonna be arriving, spend your time at Airecon, and then are you away, or are you got time to kind of like spend a couple of days kind of seeing the sites as well?
That is a regret I have, is I am shipping in and shipping out. I have young children, and they are dependent on me, and the time away is pretty rough. I would have loved, and we talked a little bit, Mandy and I talked about trying to pad the end of our trip so that we could visit other areas. But unfortunately, I don't think for me that's going to work out. So I'm flying in and spending a few days and then taking another, 16-hour flight back.
Wow.
And it'll be totally worth it.
Is it tough being away from the kids, though?
It's very difficult. My kids drive me bonkers. They're 7 and 11, but wow. I'm pretty fond of them overall, and I do prefer.
You've not cloned them then.
But let's be clear, I don't like them so much that I want to bring them with me to Airecon.
I was going to say that. I was going to say, you've not taken the extra step.
No.
You're kind of like saying, honey, I'm going to miss you both, and I love you both so much. But now I'm going to get on a plane.
That's exactly it. Bye.
What, are you doing something important, Mum? Yes, I am. It might involve, but don't worry about the photographs that you see. You might see me sitting playing lots of board games, but I'm doing really, really serious work. Kind of thing.
And that's the beautiful thing, is that because I do board games for work, they buy that. They believe it. They go, oh, that's work. So I've got
you could just get away with it. That's fantastic. You could just get away with it, totally. That's
Truth
just like
with
that.
your children is so overrated.
I was like, I've seen kind of things like this all the time, like talking about, them going about politicians lying and stuff like that. And it's like, well, I don't know, because like from a very, very early age, you're kind of pretty much lying to your kids constantly about how things kind of work, so they kind of get a grasp of the understanding. There is the whole kind of the big Christmas one as well. Kind of thing.
Indeed, and how very diplomatic of you to phrase it that way. That is one that is perpetuated in my house, and one of my two children still believe it. So
yes, and
that's fun.
That kind of makes it fun, because then it's almost like there's an extra conspiracist.
Well, that's what it is, and I think that's what's extended it for my youngest so much, is the older kiddo plays into it as well. So
yeah. And they usually come back and they've got absolutely amazing, extra, fantastical ideas that you would have never thought of. And you're just like that. I'm glad you know, but I'm going to be sad when the other one doesn't.
Pretty much.
Exactly. With you being kind of involved in board games so much, is that a big time? Is that a big part of what you're doing with the kids as well? Or do you kind of say, well, okay, I'm kind of doing so many board games here, we have to do kind of other things, and the time that you have maybe with the kids in terms of board games, it's like a moderated kind of thing, so that they're not constantly sitting around at a table learning life skills and learning how to communicate, that you do get on Netflix, right? You see this Pokemon's on, get yourself on Netflix.
Well, and it's funny you say that, because my daughter, my 11-year-old, she will sit and watch Disney tween shows all day long if I let her. So there's that. But no, both of my children really do enjoy board games, but not nearly to the degree that I enjoy board games at. Yeah. And I want board games to be a positive thing to them. I want it to be something that they look forward to, and I want it to be something that we can enjoy as a family for decades to come. So I don't push it. When they ask to play a board game, we'll play. Once in a while, I'll suggest, hey, I got this game that's perfect for us. Why don't we try it? Sometimes they'll say, I don't feel like it right now. Sometimes they'll say, great, let's do it. And we play, I would say my kids and I play games probably 3 times a week together, which I think is delightful and wonderful. And I'd like to keep it that way, where it's a positive thing for them overall.
Do you have like favorites that you go back to? Because one thing I'm aware of is, and this is probably you and me in the same boat, is, well, me more and more now, is I get sent kind of games that I'm either writing about or, going to be speaking to people about. And so my friends kind of don't like me turning up at games night, because I've always got some game that's got kind of dice faces with bits of paper stuck on them, or I've got a new game that everybody's kind of got to learn. And And I don't, sometimes they just say, listen, can we just play a game that we've played before? So are you in this situation, do you get the lovely situation where you get to play the new and exciting game sometimes with the kids, but you're also sometimes they're just like, look, can we not just play Go Nuts for Donuts or, something like that, just something that we know rather than having to learn a new game all the time?
Absolutely. 100%. My kids will actually rarely ask to play a new game. They love playing games that they know. They love not having to go through the rules process. Yeah. They're children. They get impatient. Learning rules, even on simpler games, can be tough. So favorites in my house are the game.
Yes.
And Outfoxed, which is a little cooperative deduction game. Okay. Ponga from Haba is a really popular one with them right now. And we're playing a lot of Slide Quest right now. So they definitely, don't get me wrong, they like new games and they'll learn them, but they won't look at a stack of games that I have on my shelf and go, ooh, what's that? Can we try it? They will always ask for a game they know first. Yeah.
It's the same here. It's like Super Rhino Hero Battle. That I can never get the name right. It's always the wrong way around, but I know, everybody knows what I mean. But that always comes out. King Domino's another one that always comes out. Because those are games that we know. I played King Domino Duel, the roll and write one.
The roll and write, yep.
And they were kind of hesitant in playing it because they weren't sure, but once they played it, they absolutely loved it, and it's now moved one that they would, play again and again, and they kind of like really like it. Did you play when you were growing up yourself? Did you play a lot of games as a child? I mean, was your family unit a family unit, and did you kind of all get together, sit around a table, and get to board games? You said 25 years, so was it something that was first instilled with you as a child, or was the board game side of things, was that brought in kind of later on and introduced into your life later on?
Well, the way I tell it is I discovered modern gaming in 1994 with Magic the Gathering.
Right. And
then in between, as you're waiting for a fresh opponent to come up at the back of this dingy, dusty game store in Washington State, they also had some board games. And so we started playing board games in between matches of Magic. And that's how I discovered board games and just modern gaming in general. But for sure, the love of gaming was seeded with me from a very young age through classic card games. So I grew up playing bridge and euchre and hearts with my grandparents primarily. And so from a very young age, classic card games kind of made sure that I was destined to play other games for the rest of my life, I guess.
Bridge isn't the easiest game for a child to play.
I mean, I never said I did it well. I just had very patient grandparents.
You'd have to. I can imagine that. It's just I remember we playing Snap. My father, who was a funny man, said, "Would you like to play 52 card pickup?" To which he'd go, he'd put the cards all over the floor, and then, there you go, son, as he went off and did something else. But yeah, bridge. How old were you then? What, 9, 10?
Yeah, exactly right.
Wow.
Right in that age.
Wow.
And they had this, when I would go and stay with them and visit them, they had this little group of retired military people that would get together, and they would have coffee and tea and sit down, and there was like a group of, they would have 3 or 4 tables going at a time, and I would get to sit down with them. And
oh, cool.
And it was lovely. And to this day, I still adore trick-taking games. So anytime a modern game comes out, like Time Chase came out recently, and I just love this game. And part of my love for it is definitely seated in the fact that it's a trick-taking game. Do you play any of these kind of classic, you talked about Snap, but Spades or Hearts or Pinochle, anything like that?
Yeah. I mean, all the time, I try it because sometimes it's like playing, it's like, especially my son is trying to show them kind of what I used to play as a youngster. And even just showing them how to play Patience, because nowadays they're just like, their eyes are all over the place and they just can't concentrate. It's like, no, you got to work as a strategy, and then you get them to sit down. I mean, tonight, I was playing 4 in a row with my son. Now, he's 7, so he's the same age as your youngest one. And he's got to the stage now where it's kind of gone from that point where I was letting him win to the point now where I'm trying not to lose. because
Absolutely.
he's just like banging these counters in kind of left, right, and center, and I'm just like going, I really want to play a different. And it's like, come on, well, come on, have you ever played Scythe? Just get that. There you go. Here, let's play a proper slightly bigger. No, but I find that he's at that age where he is. His hand-eye coordination is getting obviously an awful lot better, but his critical thinking and everything like that is really kind of coming on. So when we were playing like King Domino, before it was just like lucky if he laid the right tile down to play it. Now he's actively knows which ones he wants to go for in order to score the best points, and it's the same with, Briny Hero Super Battle or Go Nuts for Donuts. He knows exactly what he's meant to be going for. He's not just grabbing. At the beginning, he was obviously in Go Nuts for Donuts. He's grabbing cards and going, I won a card. Wasn't I lucky? He's now saying, right, I definitely want to get this card. But recently when we played a game, he went after a card that I needed to stop me from getting it. And then I just looked at him and went, I can't teach you anymore. This is it. The pupil has become the master and all that Star Wars.
And did you feel proud, or did you have just a little twinge of, my time has passed?
I kind of, I was kind of thinking, now we can move on maybe to some of the slightly different games. Maybe what's the next level up? What are the other things that we could get him, you could maybe get him involved in, kind of thing. Because obviously I've got a cupboard full of games, so that, him moving up a level, starting to be, unconsciously competent in a game and knowing how to strategize and stuff like that. I'm just thinking, yes, I cannot wait until we're kind of breaking out. Right, Sam, we're going to do Through the Ages. It's going to take 7.5 hours and you're going to cry a bit. We're going to work our way through it, whatever kind of happens, kind of thing. In terms of the kind of the content that you do, do you kind of keep an eye on the kind of the kids' games? Or, I mean, when you're looking for a game, do you keep the kind of the family side kind of in consideration? Or do you just say, well, because games can be so accessible. I mean, I know there's some really, really complicated games. I mean, I played the first game I played with my eldest two was Pandemic. When they were about they must have been about 9 and 7 years old at the time. And they were able to grasp a very, very complicated game that I obviously quarterbacked quite a bit to help them through. But when you're looking at games, do you kind of keep the family thing in mind, or are you just saying, well, any game that comes in could be potentially something that everybody could enjoy?
No, I have friends and I know people from online that have 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds that play Caverna and play Puerto Rico and quite advanced heavy games with them. And I think that's wonderful. I can tell you for my children, that's not a good fit for them at where they are in their gameplay enjoyment level, let alone their cognitive ability level. Yeah. And so when I think about specifically right now, my podcast, but also this new video review show that Mandy and I are starting up soon, my kind of driving thoughts, I have a few of them. I love highlighting family games. I think that a fair number of us have kids, and but I think that not everyone is talking about kid games. And certainly while my children are young enough that they can play those games and still enjoy them, I mean, at some point they'll age out of them from an enjoyment point of view, and perhaps it won't be as big of a priority to me at that point. So family games or games that appeal to younger gamers, or perhaps people who aren't as familiar with the hobby and are looking for a simpler, lighter entry into the hobby. I like to look at games from that perspective, even though those aren't necessarily the games I love to play myself.
Is that why you kind of went into the app stuff as well? Because generally, a lot of the complicated sides of playing a board game are usually handled extremely well by an app. I'm thinking, I know I joked Through the Ages, but I've heard a lot of people who, once they play like the app version of Through the Ages, will never actually touch their physical copy of the board game because it takes away a lot of the kind of the number crunching and the the nonsense that kind of happens with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the benefits of apps, but that's not a driving reason of why I got into them or why I decided to start talking about them. When I had my first kiddo, life changes dramatically, and I realized that I just had no ability to play games in the way I used to. I had other priorities. I was tired. I didn't want to, do things like put on pants so I could go game with people. And that was right around the time that things like the smartphone were coming out and games were starting to be released on them. And I realized, I can get some of this experience and kind of soothe some of my desire to play these kinds of games all in digital form. And so that's why I started playing them. And then I started talking about them because when I realized that I felt like I wanted to make content or start doing reviews or whatever you want to call them, I wanted to join the community in a way that added value and wasn't necessarily doing something that wasn't already being done by a lot of other people. And I realized that at that time, really, there weren't too many people covering board game apps. There were a lot of people covering app gaming, but they almost completely ignored the board game ports. And then on the board game side, they were definitely pretty much completely ignoring the app side of that hobby. And I thought that that was a nice little gap that I could help try to fill with discussion and video about board game apps. So that's really why I started doing board game app videos 5 or 6 years ago.
Because it's a very, there's still a very kind of Luddite view. I know that every time I see a new piece of kind of technology kind of coming out that it does any kind of amalgamation between kind of electronic and board game, there's always, I've seen it with Teberu, Simon's kind of thing, which people are going, this could be cool, and there's a lot of people going, keep your electronics away from my cardboard or I'll slap you, kind of thing. And I always see this people kind of holding back to say, well, I don't like the idea of having kind of mobile phones or any kind of technology near the cardboard at all, because that brings people who will just sit on the mobile phones, and I kind of don't want that, which is always kind of interesting. But yeah, I see what you're saying with the board game app side of things, is that I have a lot of board games that I play. I have very few apps that I play, because, and this is strange. The reason for this is, unlike a lot of the board game, unlike a lot of mobile apps, board game apps generally cost money, because they don't run on a kind of a free-to-play kind of model. So have you seen that? Is that generally, because I've seen some hefty prices. Well, not hefty. It's not hefty compared to a board game, obviously. You're not paying $100 for a mobile app. But I remember buying kind of like Shards of Infinity, and it was about it was probably about $10. Which is a pretty big chunk of change for a mobile game when you're getting things like Clash and Clash of Clans and stuff like that. You're not paying anything at all for them, which is kind of weird.
Right. Because Clash of Clans relies on alternate revenue sources, including in-app purchases and advertising. And board games don't often have that, almost never have that structure. Some board games have expansions that they could add as IAP for sure, but it's fairly uncommon for you to see a board game app having one of the video game pricing structures and revenue structures. So instead, board games tend to follow the premium model, where you definitely pay more upfront, but that's really the only way that they can get that revenue.
And then the other side of it, you're starting to see kind of games coming out through the Steam platform, like Gloomhaven and things like that as well, which is like, it's almost like your adaptations kind of going there. I've seen you talk about them. Are you kind of like a fully converted kind of, I'm quite happy to kind of straddle the electronic and the kind of the cardboard completely now.
Yeah, absolutely. I have no problem with board game apps or digital versions of board games. I don't typically have a lot of problems with technology that integrates with a otherwise analog game like Mansions of Madness or XCOM or things like that.
Yeah.
I understand why some people do. And the reality is, from my perspective, a lot of those cases tend to distill down to personal behavior and control in some ways. If you want to escape the digital and you don't want it in your board game, that's fine. That's your choice. But a lot of the complaints I hear are things like people are going to be on their phones and I want to just remove them, ban them from my table so that we can focus. And conversely, I would suggest that that's more about the social construct that you set up for your personal group and how people adhere to that. And there's a different conversation that needs to happen instead of just digital is bad and shouldn't touch my analog. And certainly that Reese's peanut butter cup argument.
What was that? A Reese's peanut butter? See, I don't know what that is. You should know I don't know that what it is. Because I do. I kind of know what it is now. Because obviously, I was speaking about it when I was talking with Orange Nebula, but I never heard of a Reese's peanut butter cup. A cup. All right. Well, I was wondering if it's like a dog that walks about like mixture of chocolate and peanut butter. And I'm like going, do they have shapes? Do they have names?
That species would be extinct because I would have hunted them all down and eaten them.
Just imagine. This would be a completely quiet podcast because it's like, I'm sorry, Suzanne's not able to come to the phone just now. She's out hunting again, with you going out with a huge butterfly net and kind of like still stains of chocolate from your last kind of conquest. Kind of
just peanut butter trails streaming behind me.
Just making sure you're running everywhere so you can kind of, keep the calories at bay. Because those pups can move fast.
They're so slippery.
But they are so damn tasty at the same time. There's... And everybody's right. The fear does make them taste nicer.
It's seasons of peanut butter meat.
Seasons. Yeah, seasons is sweet.
And I know that a lot of people have a no phones at the table, or there's a lot of online discussion about frowning upon phones being used at the table. And I take a different approach. I'm a mother. If I'm away from my children, I need to have my phone with me. I need to be able to be contacted if there's a problem or an emergency. Yeah. And I do what I do. So I take photos. My phone is out. What I can tell you right now, my phone is out constantly while I play games. I take photos of games. I share them while I'm playing online to let people know what I'm playing and to kind of spread the good word of board games as best I can. I try to keep it very conversational. It's how I work. I like to talk about it while I'm doing it.
Yeah.
But I fully respect the player's experience. So I'm also not one where people are elbowing me, hey, it's your turn. And then I take 10 minutes to think about my turn. I am respectful of and aware of the table situation and don't hold it up and don't let that interfere. And I think that that's, again, just about personal responsibility and respect for the group and respect for the experience and the game itself, as opposed to a problem with just the existence of an object in a space.
I'm kind of, as part and parcel of, being who we are, myself, I do end up taking photographs of games when we're playing games. Because sometimes the best part, it's all very well. I get the whole photography thing and people setting up and staging kind of things and making things look amazing. But also, sometimes I'll take, just like you, I'll take pictures like of the middle of a game because I'll look back on those pictures later on, months to come, and I'll say, oh yeah, that was the bit where I totally got my ass kicked. That was a fun time. And, but also at the same time, it's not, there's difference between kind of setting up a couple of cards and kind of looking like you're playing a game and actually seeing the game almost in its natural environment and kind of seeing it being played out. So if I kind of said, oh, I don't do that, then I'd be lying, and people would be shouting and saying he's lying, because I do. I am putting up pictures on Instagram of what I've been playing on particular game nights. Especially sometimes I'll take those actual live action pictures and put them in any kind of written content that we would do. Would you? I mean, you mentioned the new video series that you're going to be doing with your partner in crime, Mandy.
Yes.
Why? What's made you decide to go and do something different? And can you tell us a little bit about what this is all about?
Absolutely, of course. So one show we just launched at the beginning of the year, or actually at the end of 2019, was Apptastic, which is our digital board game show where Mandy and I play digital board games either with or against each other, depending on the situation, and live stream it. Thereby showcasing and proving our absolute embracing of the binary digital enemy, I guess, in our hobby world. But the other show that we are starting actually in just a couple of weeks from the day that we're recording here is a live streaming review show that we have called Salt Sass. And it's just Mandy and I. We're each going to talk about a couple of board games each episode. We'll share some photos. We'll give a very brief overview of what type of game it is and kind of how it plays. And then we'll give our opinions on it, of course. But what we really like to do is talk with other people and find out what other people think and what their experiences were, but also help people figure out if this is a game that they would like to invest in. Board gaming is very expensive. Board games are a luxury hobby, without a doubt, for the most part. And people look to people like you or people like me to help them understand where they should invest their dollars, whether it's because their tastes align or because certain details are shared that help them better understand what they're getting into, etc. And that's what Salt and Sass is really about, because we're going to get to talk about the game and show off the game a little bit. But then because it's live streaming, we can take questions from the viewers and answer them in real time. And the benefit of that is, one, somebody gets an answer right away, which is super cool, instead of dropping a comment in a YouTube video and then waiting to see if the video maker ever responds. But also, they're thinking about the game in a different way than Mandy and I are. And so maybe their question will help other people watching get information that they would like to have about the game as well. So that's really what Salt and Sass is about. It's about showing off games and helping people find games that they might be interested in, and just having fun and meeting people digitally and talking with them about games.
Well, I've got two questions. The first question is, are you keeping score about who's winning the digital games? And currently, is it you that's winning between the two of you on the games that you've played?
Absolutely. And it is 50-50. We are batting 500 each right now.
That is such a politician's answer. I can't believe it. Secondly, are you going to be selective with 50? I don't believe you for a second. I'm sure. We'll see. I'll be interested to see what happens in 6 months, and if you'll be ahead or what will happen. In terms of the games for Salt and Sass, are you picking them beforehand? Are they going to be games that you have played? Because I've seen, I know that Paul Grogan from Gaming Rules, he was playing around with saying, look, I'm just going to take a game out of the box and start playing it from the rules to see if I could actually kind of get it to the table and play the game, which I think would be an interesting thing. But are you going to be playing games that you've already played with Mandy?
Yeah, before? Absolutely. On that front, it'll be much more of a traditional review show, in that it's a game that we will have become reasonably familiar with and have an opinion one way or another on, and we'll be able to provide that insight. I admire Paul, and I think that caters, I think Paul's approach caters to Paul's strengths in many ways. Paul's strengths are not my strengths, and I would be terrified of doing something like that. So, yes, we are following a more traditional line on.
I'd probably forget to read halfway through. It's like, this isn't, I can't, nope, that word's gone. I can't, I don't even, how do you, what's this? It's MEEPLE. How do you say that? That's what would happen. Because I see Paul doing that and I'm just like, Paul, what are you doing? It's like, you're going somewhere I can't follow kind of thing. It's very scary. But yeah, he's just, that kind of dives in, but he's doing kind of live streaming on a kind of a regular basis. Is Salt and Sass going to be something that's going to be a weekly thing, a monthly thing, just whenever you can kind of do it kind of thing?
Well, right now we're doing Apptastic every other Wednesday, and then Salt and Sass is scheduled to be every other Sunday.
Okay.
So we're trying to make it very consistent, just to help people discover it and rely on it, and it gives us something to plan and work around. And it allows us, by being consistent, it allows us to highlight more games. There are so many games coming out every month right now. It's impossible for anybody to keep up, but we're going to do our best to play the games that we have and get to share them as we go to help people discover them, or quite frankly, roll them out if they want to, and to go from there.
And have you got a plan of kind of like the next couple of games that you're doing, or what have you got kind of planned that you're going to be doing? So
Salt and Sass starts January 19th on Sunday. So it'll be our very, very first episode. So I am sure it will be fraught with issues, being our inaugural episode, trying to do something different and fun.
Yeah.
But we do have our games planned, and we are planning ahead typically, because what we want to be able to do is show images of the game. We're not going to just hold up components of the game, because we feel like that doesn't best showcase it. So we'll, just like we were talking about, taking photos while you play, we're going to have this stockpile of photos, and we have to preload them so that we can rotate through them as we're describing the game and explaining the game, so that they can show on screen. So we have planned ahead, and I do in fact know the 2 games I'm going to feature on the first episode.
But you're not going to tell me, are you? Just going to have to tune in and find out, aren't we?
I'll tell you, I don't care.
Okay.
I am going to cover a game called Rob Davio's Shipshape.
Okay.
And a game called 18 Lilliput.
Sounds familiar. I don't know why. But then it could be because I've got it confused with an 18XX game. But I'm guessing it's not an 18XX game, or am I wrong?
Oh, well, Richard, you don't know what you've just asked. You have no idea what you've done.
I've got my specially planned show notes. If you refer to page 37, section C, you know this question was coming up. So, I don't know why you're acting shocked unless you're very good at acting. But anyway, yes. Tell me.
18 Lilliput is a card-based 18XX game. Now,
I'm so glad I do my research before these things.
And for those who aren't aware, 18XX gamers are very passionate about their unique niche of games.
Yes.
And they are very, very opinionated.
Yeah.
And I said 18 Lilliput was an 18XX game online, publicly.
Yeah. And
proceeded to get a fairly significant drubbing by strangers for hours because of that. There apparently is some disagreement about whether 18 Lilliput qualifies as an 18XX game or not. But after much discussion and consultation with experts, I've decided to stand by my stance that it is an 18XX game.
And you've decided then as well to live stream it. Live stream 18 Lilliput. And I understand you say you've got notes here to say you're going to be wearing t-shirts saying, "Be quiet, it is an 18XX game." Is that true as well, or did I just make that up?
No. I thought that was something I told you off the record, but now that you've shared it, that's fine.
Start your laundry time.
Yeah, I will just point out the show is called Salt and Sass, not Friendly Happy Cotton Candy Game Time. So
that'd be the anime version.
Yeah, take that for what you will. And
exactly.
I may have picked those games very specifically. We'll see how it goes. Wish me luck, please, Richard.
God bless her and all who's sailing her. as they would say. Where's my bottle of champagne? Is it going to be on is it going to be on a specific YouTube type channel? Is it going to be under your YouTube channel? Is it going to be, where can you find it, I guess, is the easiest question to ask.
You got there eventually. You just had to go on a little journey.
I did, like X Factor.
Yes, it'll air on the Dice Tower's YouTube channel. Cool. The Dice Tower decided that they didn't really want to invest in building up their Twitch presence. So Mandy and I have a Twitch channel called Salt Sass Games. And so we will be broadcasting both on the Salt Sass Twitch channel, but then we will be airing on the Dice Tower's YouTube channel.
Do you think that's the way forward? Because I see that, I don't see it much in board game. I don't know why I went high pitch there. Too much helium. But do you think that that's
that
the kind of the way
so much?
It probably does. It probably does, and also at the same time, it probably doesn't. But I've seen it happening in a lot of role playing, tabletop RPG stuff, where people are going down the kind of the live stream, kind of Twitch kind of presentation. I've not seen it so much yet on the board game tabletop side of things, and I'm wondering if that's a direction where people are going to go.
I think people, including Mandy and myself, are going to try. I think that it is a hard thing to do on Twitch. I think a good example of people who are doing it well are the Brothers Murph.
Yes.
Because those goofy boys are just amazing. They're hilarious and they're energetic and they just get it. And so I think that they have a real shot at being very successful on Twitch with analog games. But the reality is, if you were to go to a board game convention and pick out any given random game, chances are you're looking at 4 people hunched over a table, staring intensely at a board and not talking to each other half the time. It's just the nature of board games. They're cerebral, and certainly for Euro style games and things like that, they're not necessarily hugely animated. They don't necessarily come up with moments that have a lot of huge emotional bursts or things like that. No, so I think it's a hard gaming medium to convey successfully in a platform like Twitch in general. So I think people are going to try because Twitch is such a growing and huge entity in the world of gaming in general. Yes, but it is, it'll be interesting to see if people can really, really make a go of it, because I think there's distinct challenges to that. Mandy and I are doing it because we want to see what happens and just try to establish a presence. But we already know from our first few episodes of Apptastic that without a doubt, at least from the YouTube from the Dice Tower's point of view, the YouTube channel is far more active and engaged than Twitch is right now. We'll see. Yeah,
and you don't get anywhere if you just sit there doing nothing as well. And as you said, it's a growing platform, and it's just a case of how we kind of harness it. Have you not thought of jumping over the other side of the fence and kind of? I mean, is there the Suzanne Sheldon design book that's sitting there that you will, Sunday night when the kids are in bed and you get half an hour to yourself, that you've got game designs and stuff like that you've scribbled together?
Is that what Richard does?
No. I go ahead and that's when I usually spend my 3 or 4 hours researching my guests before I have them on to chat to them.
I have always said that I admire and respect and appreciate game designers so much because I have no clue how or why their brains work the way they do.
Yeah.
It's an absolutely, and if I was speaking more normally or casually here, I would be swearing right now. I have no freaking clue how game designers do what they do. And I think that actually in some ways strengthens my appreciation for board games, because there's always this element of mystery about them to me, where I go on a journey and I explore and discover and enjoy, and I have no idea how it happened. I can't garden. I've got a black thumb, a huge, massive black thumb that controls the weather too.
I can't believe. Yeah, we are going there.
Yeah. And I greatly appreciate people who can garden and greatly appreciate flowers and gardens and things like that. I just can't do it myself. So no, I have absolutely no desire to design a game on my own. I just like telling people why games are good or bad. Because apparently that's where I think I have authority, even though I can't do it myself. And isn't that just just the internet way about it?
That is just that is board game media. That's what that is.
It pretty much is. Here's the thing. I could never create this magical thing that takes dozens of people and hundreds of hours of work, and I hate it.
I don't like the colour scheme. Yeah. It's crap.
They could have done better.
2 out of 10. Don't buy this thing that this person spent 120 hours of their life, mortgaged some of their house for, and sold their dog so they could get it to the table. Funded
really?
It on
the hubris, the absolute hubris of the people we are.
Yeah, we're a disgrace.
I agree.
We must be stopped at some point, but not until I say I'm finished. Then you can stop everything else. I'm disappointed you haven't sworn yet. If people want to find you on the internet webs, why
on earth would anybody want to do that?
Where do you want? I have no idea because, but if they did, if they've listened along and they've went, I want to know more. This sounds interesting. How do we find this person? Where do you exist on the internet webs?
I exist. Oh, you poor people. So you can find me most active on Twitter. My handle there is @425Suzanne.
Don't ask where the other 424 Suzannes went to. There's a story behind it. Okay. And
you can find me on Board Game Geek, the ubiquitous Board Game Geek site. My handle there is Gibbous, Gibbous. Do with that as you will. Keep in mind, you can't change I've been on Board Game Geek for over a decade, and you can't change your username there once you establish it. So,
no, you can't.
Choices were made.
Regrets have been had.
Yeah. You can always email me at 425Suzanne@gmail.com, and you can listen to my podcast. I host half of the Dice Tower podcast episodes with my podcasting partner Mandy, and you can find our new shows Apptastic and the upcoming Salt Sass on the Dice Tower's YouTube channel.
And what we will do is we will put all of these links in the show notes so that we have got notes to show. If you want to keep an eye on what we're up to, just go to the internet webs and search for We're Not Wizards. If you want to read about stuff we do, we've got a blog. It's we'renotwizards.blogspot.com. We've got Twitter and we've got Instagram. We've got Facebook. You just search for We're Not Wizards. You'll find us because we're spreading everywhere. Just like things that spread, like jam. If you like what you've listened to. It depends because if it's crunchy and the bread's like...
Oh, good point.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I'm hungry now.
Yeah. A Reese's Pieces dog would just go down the treat just now. But if you like what you've listened to tonight, then there's a couple of things you can do. You can go to our Patreon and support us on an ongoing basis because that helps pay for things that I want to buy. Let's be honest. The other thing that you can do is you can jump onto the podcast catchers of choice and drop a subscription. If you like us even more, go to the Apple Podcasts and drop us a rating or a review. If you are going to be dropping us a rating or a review, do not give us 10 stars because it makes us big-headed. But don't give us 1 because it makes us cry. Give us something in the middle, like a 5, because it's average. We're just a little bit average. But the person who's not been average tonight is a rather wonderful, rather fantastic Suzanne Sheldon. Thank you very, very much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me on. I am so glad to have finally made it happen. Yay!
There's only 2 more things to do. The first thing is to remember that we're many things, but we're not wizards. Are we wizards, Suzanne?
We are not wizards.
That's good. I'm glad, because you could have let me down at the end, and that would have been disappointing. And the other thing is to say goodbye. So it's goodbye from Suzanne. Say goodbye, Suzanne.
Goodbye, Suzanne.
And it's a goodbye from me. Remember, stay safe, roll sixes, make something awful. Until the next time, get yourself a little bit of salt and sass about you with your little kind of game that people are saying shouldn't be an 18xx game, but everybody says who is. Come fight me. Until the next time, though, goodbye.
Goodbye.
A wizard is never late. Nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to.